KBNU.com.
Stocks dropped today, the Dow losing more than nearly 1,000 points, and the value of the U.S. dollar fell as investors reacted to President Trump's tariff policy and calls for lower interest rates now. ABC's Jacqueline Lee explains.
The value of the dollar, it's based off of confidence in the U.S. So if the U.S. has a strong economy, investors will view the dollar as safe. But the problem we're now seeing is just given the unpredictability of President Trump and the tariffs policy, investors now see the dollar as volatile and not a guaranteed sure bet anymore. So just compound that with the trade war that we're all seeing. That is why the market is showing that the dollar is falling.
Meta announcing it's making some changes aimed at keeping younger people from lying about their ages on their accounts.
Using artificial intelligence, Meta now says it's going to automatically place users suspected of being underage into a more restrictive form of account on Facebook and Instagram. Teen accounts were rolled out last year and limit who can see and who can message with a teenager's profile.
ABC's Mike Dubusky. Hyattsville police in Maryland releasing a statement today saying they encountered Kilmar Abrego Garcia in March of 2019 outside a Home Depot, but did not classify him as a member of the MS-13 gang at that time. Another police department that took custody of him later in the day listed him as being affiliated with the gang, something he and his family have denied. Abrego Garcia is the man the Trump administration says they mistakenly deported an El Salvador prison. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
Good afternoon. It's now 4:05, and with your KBNU News update, I'm Will Feelright, as we've had partly cloudy skies and nice afternoon as we've been into the high 50s, and it looks like tomorrow's going to be even better. I'm Will Feelright with your KBNU headlines at this hour as we kick off the KBNU For the People show. First, our top stories. A 21-year-old Utah State University student has been arrested for allegedly sexually assaulting another student last month, according to law enforcement. Nolan Forrest Hoyt was booked Wednesday into the Cache County Jail following an investigation by the USU Police Department. Now, according to the arrest affidavit, the alleged victim had called police reporting the incident on March 30th. She claimed that she and Hoyt had been friends. Now, on the night of the incident, the woman explained how she had fallen asleep at Hoyt's apartment. In the middle of the night, she woke up to find the suspect molesting her and inappropriately touching himself. Now, the alleged victim said that she was in shock and didn't know what to do. Soon after, she left and went to her apartment, disclosing to her roommates what had happened. The woman later confronted Hoyt about the incident in a recorded phone call. He reportedly admitted to touching her without her consent and blamed his actions on being stupid, according to court paperwork. Now, jail records show that Hoyt was booked on suspicion of forcible sexual abuse, a second-degree felony. He was later released pending arraignment on formal charges in Logan's First District Court. Meanwhile, a 33-year-old Logan man last week admitting to elbowing someone in the face so hard that it fractured bone, all in front of several children. Michael Ernesto Pacheco accepted a plea deal and will now await sentencing. It was back on March 7th that Pacheco was in a dispute with another person over having some things fixed around the house. Now, during the argument, he took the victim's car keys and attempted to leave, according to prosecutors. Now, the victim tried to get the keys back, but Pacheco elbowed them in the left side of the face, fracturing bone between the eye socket and temple. They were later taken to the hospital where surgery was necessary to repair the damage. The Logan City Police reported 5 children were present during the altercation. Pacheco fled the house. Officers found him 2 days later in the victim's attic. He reportedly has an extensive history of domestic violence and fleeing from law enforcement. Now, according to court records, Pacheco remains in the Cache County Jail being held without bail and is scheduled to be sentenced May 19th when he could face up to 5 years in prison. And the driver of the car that hit an 11-year-old boy in Roy, Jason Strong, has reportedly been picked up by ICE agents on unrelated charges. Police said that prosecutors aren't ready to charge him with anything until a toxicology report comes back. Meanwhile, Jason is still in a medically induced coma as doctors are trying to learn more about his condition and recovery. Now, the family has been at Primary Children's Hospital since the crash happened back on Tuesday night, and they're hoping for the very best, but it's still unclear if Jason will be able to pull through or what his recovery will look like. Jason's grandma, Susan Strong, called his condition dire. She said it's been a scary situation since the very first night. Well, partly cloudy skies continuing through the rest of the afternoon as temperatures have been in the high 50s today, and now tonight we'll drop into the mid-30s, around 35 overnight, and then be into the 60s for tomorrow as temperatures will start to warm up. And as we continue to go through the rest of the week, gradually getting towards the high 60s, but beginning Wednesday is when we'll start to see a chance of some showers. And Whole Tree Care brings you our weather on the 6s. Right now, you can get 10% off tree and shrub trimming when you call Whole Tree Care, 760-6587. And I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News headlines.
Ah, spring. That time of year when you turn up the heat in the morning and the air conditioner in the afternoon. If you're constantly adjusting your thermostat just to stay comfortable, it might be time to talk insulation. You see, today's insulation is superior to what they used to put in homes. Not only does it help regulate the temperature inside, but it can also slash your energy bills. Or maybe you just need to insulate your attic, garage, or a specific room. No problem. Call Cardall's Insulation, 755-5012. That's 755-5012.
Breaking news and stimulating talk. KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
The Earth Day celebration is our big annual event each year at Valley Metal Recycling. Hi, this is Paulette. Do your spring cleaning and bring us all your old metal, appliances, soda cans, old car parts, or cars. Come in this week to our clean and paved yard. You'll be in and out quick, and we'll put cash in your hand with our best prices so far this year. The Earth Day celebration happens all week long. Enjoy prizes, giveaways, free snacks, and cash in your hand for all your old recyclable metal. No appointment needed. Just stop by 145 North 10th West, Valley Metal Recycling.
Here's Chad Norton, the lawn doctor, with a tip for your lawn.
Warmer temperatures have both weeds and grass competing for space in your yard. Dandelions, thistle, clover, morning glory will all be kept under better control when you have us applying pre-emergence and weed control. At the same time, we can feed your grass to make sure it wins the battle and keep it lush and growing all season long. Regular visits from the lawn doctor will help your lawn be healthier and pest-free.
Fertilizer, weed, and pest control. Call Chad Norton, the lawn doctor, at 753-LAWN. Follow them on Facebook or go to LawnDoctorCacheValley.com.
The Greater Cache Valley Economic and Business Summit, brought to you by the Cache Valley Chamber of Commerce, is Tuesday, April 29th at the Riverwoods Conference Center, focusing on local Cache Valley businesses, along with a State of the County address by David Zook and keynote speaker Michael Jeanfro. Enjoy a day of networking, learning about Cache Valley's economy, and lunch catered by Elements. Register now at CacheChamber.com. That's CacheChamber.com for the Greater Cache Valley Economic and Business Summit, sponsored by the Bank of Utah, April 29th at the Riverwoods.
The Above and Beyond Salute.
Hello?
Yeah, good morning. Is Kaylee there?
This is her.
You're a second grade teacher, is that right?
That is correct.
Someone reached out to us and told us about a special experience, I guess, that you had with one of your students. And a child had been struggling to attend school, did not want to go. And to help this child not only start to feel comfortable in your class, but also build their self-confidence. And we heard about it, and we wanted to treat you with free lunch to Firehouse Subs.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
The Above and Beyond Salute on News Talk KVNU. KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, online at 610kvnu.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. I'm Jason Williams. It is Monday, April 21st. a little cooler today than we've been used to. 58 degrees here at the Radio Ranch at 4:12 in the afternoon. Going to get a little cooler still. As you heard during the news break there from Will, the forecast is, well, basically mostly clear skies heading into tonight, and then sunny and a little warmer even tomorrow. And then it gets partly cloudy as Tuesday winds down and drops down into the 40s, low 40s overnight. And then Wednesday, the thunderstorms and the showers begin, all possible not until after noon on Wednesday, but mostly cloudy with a high of 67 on Wednesday. So very spring-like this week. And that continues on in through the week. Thursday with a lower chance of showers, but still clouds. And then Friday, just a slight chance of showers. And then heading into the weekend, also another chance of showers and thunderstorms. So this is good news as far as the water outlook, in Utah. We talked about it on Friday, the state's water report showing that things here in northern Utah still look pretty good. Things in southern Utah still look pretty dire. And still a lot of people wondering what is going to happen in southern Utah. What options do they have with the population growth they've seen? So we'll talk about that later on in the show. Also on the show today, our good friend Danny Bues joining us. Danny Bues, we spoke a couple of weeks ago with former state representative Dan Johnson and others from the CRIC, the Cache Refugee and Immigrant Connection. These groups, like CRIC here in Cache Valley, have one job, and that is to help refugees who came to the U.S. legally through the asylum and refugee process, usually from war-torn countries, or in some cases, individuals or even families who are here through political asylum, meaning the whoever was in power in their country wanted them dead, oftentimes for religious or even race reasons. There are a lot of different ways a person can enter into this program. It takes years to go through the program and often involves leaving their home country before being accepted into the U.S. as a refugee, meaning they stay. One example, in Greece, there is a huge refugee camp. And sometimes these families, even with young children, can end up staying there 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Once accepted, they come legally to the United States, and they are, through refugee placement programs in every state, are given a place to go. And these nonprofit organizations help them find a home, help them find a job, help them get driver's licenses, and integrate them into the local culture. Cache Refugee and Immigrant Connection is very good at what they do. I've had the chance to meet many of these families, refugees and immigrants from all around the world, and they are a great addition to Cache Valley's culture. But imagine how weird that would be. So we talked with former State Representative Dan Johnson, who is now currently serving as interim executive director of the Cache Refugee and Immigrant Connection. And we talked about how you can help. Well, we've heard a lot from listeners since then. What more can we do? What is happening statewide? What does the overall lay of the land look with a lot of the changes happening when it comes to immigration policy in the U.S. with a new administration and more, and most of that still being caught up in the courts. We don't really know what the policies are or even how much president gets to direct this thing. Congress should be stepping up and weighing in. I don't know why they aren't yet, but that's been kind of a pattern for Congress for a couple of decades now, unfortunately. Too busy getting reelected to do their jobs is the way I like to describe Congress. But this is a great question. What more can you do to help these families who are here and are now legal residents of the U.S.? They are Utahns, and they're trying to learn a completely new way of life, a completely new culture. So we reached out to our friend Danny Bues, who is currently working with a statewide organization called the IRC, Immigrant and Refugee Committee. This is a statewide nonprofit organization that helps groups like Cache Valley's CRIC do what they do. So he'll be joining us later on in the show. And finally, also coming up, a pretty big news over the weekend, well, actually Friday night, a ruling from a Utah judge striking, and this will be appealed, so nothing's changed yet, but striking Utah's school voucher program. The judge ruled that it actually violates the state constitution, which has a mandate for Utah lawmakers to fund K through 12 education. Judge saying that the way the law was written and the way it is funded actually takes that into the realm of taking money away from public education in a way that is unconstitutional. Now, the judge didn't say a school voucher program. For those not familiar, a voucher program is when taxpayer dollars that would normally go to public schools are taken out of the pot and put into some sort of distribution program, and then people who want to send their kids to private schools, the for-profit charter schools, things like that, can. And this has been a popular thing in the conservative communities nationwide for many decades now. It's never been popular here in Utah, and that is why lawmakers kind of had to ram this one through on us. They attached their pet project of a school voucher program to a very popular measure a couple of years ago, which was raising salaries for teachers. And they basically held that hostage. They said, you want to raise salaries for teachers so we can be more competitive in hiring teachers? Then give us our voucher program. And in rural areas of Utah, voucher programs are not popular because there aren't as many options in general for using the voucher program. So it generally goes to families in the Salt Lake County and Utah County areas, very urban areas. That's why they attached it to the teacher salary increase bill when they did this 2 years ago, because they knew running an independent voucher bill would probably just get them all yelled at by their constituents. It was a very cynical process, and it was rushed. They had to fix it the following year. They had to adjust the funding. And then this year, they just doubled the funding even more. And then a judge said, this is unconstitutional. We'll talk about what the sponsor, Representative Candace Pierucci, had a meltdown on social media over this. And it was kind of countered. The governor stepped in and kind of countered her. It was an interesting thing to play out, to see play out. But what does this mean going forward? And for families out there here in Cache Valley, if there are any who are currently taking advantage of this voucher program, what does this mean for you? Well, I got all the details. I reached out to the state, which unfortunately just ended its contract with the private company they had contracted with to run the voucher program. So there currently is not a contract with a new company yet. So it's all up in the air. What does it mean, and what do people who are currently taking advantage of the voucher system, what do they need to do going forward? Everything you need to know, and a little background on how this all played out over the last 3 days, right after this.
Cash Equipment in Hyde Park has been serving the farmers, ranchers, contractors, even homeowners for years. And now they've got a new name, Black Cliffs Equipment. Different name, but the same trusted team. Same top quality Kubota and Massey Ferguson tractors and equipment. And the same commitment to service to keep you moving forward. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling hay, or breaking ground on something big, Black Cliffs Equipment is here for you. Located in Hyde Park and online at blackcliffsequipment.com.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me, I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Dr. Shelley Flace with today's tip for kids from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Parents make all kinds of choices about their child's health. One important way you can protect your child's health is with vaccines. Viruses and bacteria are unpredictable, and even healthy children can develop severe complications.
I'm all done.
By vaccinating, you can feel good that you're doing everything you can to protect your child from harmful diseases. If you have questions about your child's vaccines, talk with your pediatrician and visit healthychildren.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. The Catholic Church will now begin efforts to find a new pope. We'll examine the sacred process that dates back centuries. Also, with thousands of government workers being let go, some economists say the Washington, D.C. economy could enter a recession, and the number of Americans who say they can't afford to travel. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Big news late Friday evening from Utah 3rd District Court Judge Laura Scott, who ruled that Utah's Utah Fits All school voucher program violates the state constitution. The reason, and that alone would be big news, but the reason this has caused such a mad dash scramble is that in the original legislation that lawmakers rushed, to be honest, the bill itself lays out a deadline for applications, and that is a week away. So while lawmakers are trying to ramp this program up to sort of prove, that it works, because they're getting a lot of questions from constituents. Let's back up. Okay, so the background on this again: lawmakers kind of rammed this down most of rural Utah's throat. Private school voucher programs are not popular in rural parts of the state, and they failed as independent legislation every time they've been brought up because people call their lawmakers and yell at them and say, "What are you doing? Taking funds away from the public school system that serves rural areas more and dumping it into a private school voucher program which serves the Salt Lake County and Utah County areas more, where the private schools are." So in a cynical move a couple of years ago, Representative Candace Pierucci attached her, with the sanction of leadership, it was Brad Wilson at the time, and they did something I hate to see the legislature do, where they take something they know won't be popular and they attach it to something they know is. In this case, it was raising salaries for teachers so Utah could deal with a teacher shortage, be more competitive at hiring teachers. And so they knew that was popular. They knew the voucher program was questionable on its popularity. It had been a while since any polls were done, but still. And they said, basically, they held teacher salary increases hostage. They said, if you want your teacher salary increases, give us our school voucher program. Because this has been sort of a pet project for a handful of lawmakers that were still mad, going way back to 2007. That's how long this goes back, when they tried to create a voucher program here in Utah, and the public lit them up, and it was later repealed by referendum. And then, so that's all the background you need on this. So the Utah Fits All scholarship program has been up and running a couple of years now. Just this year, they nearly doubled the funding. There have been questions about accountability and transparency that they've promised they're still working on. They're refining it, all of this stuff. It was challenged in court by a couple of different organizations, but the most prominent is the Utah Education Association, the teachers union. And they said that the program, in their lawsuit, the program violates Utah's constitution because it distributes funds intended for public education to private education without the same level of access and accountability standards, transparency standards. Well, Judge Scott agreed. In her ruling, she said Utah Fits All violates Utah's constitution for those very reasons. It redirects public funds meant for education, as clearly spelled out in the state constitution, reading from her ruling here, without the same level of access, transparency, and accountability for the public, meaning it is less possible to see how the money is being used and if it's being used effectively, and it lacks transparency overall. That is a mistake on the drafter's part. Representative Pierucci, Republican from Harriman, owns that one. And because of that, she freaked out Friday night. She since walked that back. First, she called Judge Scott an, quote, activist judge, which is the lamest response to a judicial ruling you don't like. It doesn't mean there are never activist judges. I think it probably happens. But this is such a lazy knee-jerk reaction. And the governor immediately spotted that too. Governor Cox was out with a much more measured, calm statement that basically said, we're disappointed by this ruling, not surprised, and we are preparing for an appeal. So it's going to be appealed. Nothing is final on this. But again, for parents out there who maybe were planning on taking advantage of this, I've seen the numbers. There aren't a lot here in Cache Valley. Again, it's mostly the urban areas of the state like Salt Lake County and Utah County that, and to be honest with you, looking at the data, it's mostly wealthier families as well that are interested in this Utah Fits All Scholarship program, as it's called, a school voucher program to fund, use taxpayer dollars to offset the cost of private schools. What does this mean, though? Because the deadline for registering this program is a week away. And so what happens next? That's really so legally, the program is just kind of on pause. But what do people do if you're thinking of applying or if you have applied? Well, first off, just wait. Don't rush out and cancel your application. I do know of one family here in Utah with 2 children with special needs, and that's where a voucher program can actually be extremely useful because oftentimes children with special needs can't get adequate education resources without very specialized attention. And so oftentimes there are private academies that specialize in certain special needs situations, and a voucher can be perfect for that. So those are the people I'm thinking of here. The question, what you do now, is really up in the air because, again, it's going to be appealed. Right now, there is a request in from one of the lifelong, actually, Robin Begley. She started out, if you're old school, a political junkie for decades, you'll remember Parents for Choice in Education, PCE. Its former executive director, Robin Begley, is now executive director of the Utah Education Fits All nonprofit advocacy group. And so they've renamed Parents for Choice in Education, basically. That name was so attached to school vouchers, it was almost like a dirty word for a while. They're asking for the judge to stay her own ruling, which basically means they're saying to the judge, look, this is going to be appealed, and the judge admits that too, that this is going to go through a couple of different courts and may actually end up at the state Supreme Court. It won't go above that because this is a state-only issue. This isn't going to the United States Supreme Court, but it could take months, if not a year, before any final decision comes from the state Supreme Court. So they're asking the judge to stay her own ruling, saying that the program, which was initially funded to the tune of $42 million in taxpayer money, and again, lawmakers have bumped that up to almost $80 million in the most recent legislative session, or excuse me, $100 million in the most recent legislative session, and they are saying that they want the judge to stay her own order because they're saying, look, applications for this program are due within a week. Your order right now says the program can't legally operate until a higher court rules. And so they're asking the judge to stay her own order, saying your order stands. This moves up on appeal to the circuit courts. But please don't put the program on hold entirely until then. Whether the judge does that or not, though, because you have to remember this is a judge who has ruled that it's unconstitutional for this money to be taxpayer money to be spent in this way. So a stay would basically be the judge saying, I think it's unconstitutional, but I'm going to let you keep doing it until a higher court weighs in. I would guess that's unlikely. I would guess the program stays paused at this point, and we end up seeing maybe a special legislative session in which lawmakers have to do something to change their own legislation in order to create more time, basically, to make it possible for the higher courts to weigh in, but extend the application deadline. Now that's going to get tough too because the application deadline is for the coming school or the school year we're in. The program, if you apply for the program, you could basically be approved and be into a private school through this taxpayer-funded voucher program by June. So there is a bit of a rush on all of this. That will probably mean that the higher courts weigh in sooner than they oftentimes do. But it could also mean the whole thing is just paused for the time being. But so for those out there, so I reached out and I said, okay, what if someone here in Cache Valley is currently enrolled in the program and applying for the school vouchers again for the next school year, for the one that starts in the fall maybe? What should they do? And the people who run the voucher program right now, which again isn't a private company, they ended that contract, so it's just a group of people who have volunteered basically to keep this floating. They have said that for parents out there who have applied and been approved for the school voucher money, then don't panic. Just assume that your application is still active and valid, and that there will be more word coming. Because, again, this is going to have to go up through a higher court, and that is something that's probably going to take a bit of time. So applications for the Tough It's All Scholarship opened to renewing applicants January 21st, and then brand new first-time applicants March 3rd. And then you can apply up until May 1st. That's a week from this Thursday. So, again, a lot up in the air on this, but they're hoping that they can get, through appeal, the state is hoping that they can get up through the courts quickly. But interestingly enough, the state also, or the Judge Scott also rejected the state's argument in defense of the program. They said the program is, quote, the state argued the program is outside the public education system and thus not subject to certain transparency rules, or Article 10 rules as they're known, which basically says the public has a right to know how public education is being funded, where the money's going, and then the legislature's added their own bills to that. So they're claiming, first the claim was that this voucher program is just an extension of public education, everything will be fine. Now they're saying, in their own legal argument, the state is saying, well, no, now it's not public education and not subject to these transparency rules. And the judge disagreed, said, look, this is taxpayer money meant for education. That's how it's collected here in the state. Income tax collected by constitutional decree. Income tax collected by the state is for public education. Lawmakers wanted to change that, remember, and I'm glad we didn't. But they're still asking, and they'll probably ask again. But right now, they haven't been able to change that. So any income tax collected can only go to fund education, K through 12 and higher ed. And the judge said because of that, this is public education money, and it is subject to Article 10 rules, transparency rules, public access rules, and equality rules, meaning that any family should have access to this program. So the judge said, while the legislature has some authority over education programs, its authority does not extend to creating a publicly funded education system that sidesteps constitutional protections for every taxpayer. And she said, simply labeling it a separate program, as the state has tried to do here, quote, does not make it exempt from the laws that apply to all of public education. So we'll see what happens. Again, the governor said they are already preparing for appeal, and they're hoping to fast track that. But right now the question is, will the judge stay her own ruling and allow the program to function despite the fact that she has ruled it unconstitutional? And, well, we'll see. All right. On the other side, our good friend Danny Bues used to be with the Cache Refugee and Immigrant Connection. He's now with the statewide nonprofit, the IRC, the Immigrant and Refugee Committee. A lot of listeners, after we spoke with Representative Dan Johnson last week, wanted to know what they could do to help immigrant and refugee families here in Utah trying to make a new life here. And statewide, that's a big challenge. So Danny agreed to come and talk to us about that. And he'll join us after this look at the news with KVNU's Will Feel Right.
Well, thank you, Jason. A judge ruling that the Utah Fits All Scholarship is unconstitutional. Judge Laura Scott said in a statement that because the program is neither a social services program nor a program limited to supporting children with disabilities, that the court was concluding that the program would be considered unconstitutional. Now, the Utah Education Association celebrated the ruling. They called it a significant victory for public education and a reaffirmation that public money belongs in public schools. The association said that this decision protects the integrity of public education, ensuring critical funding remains in schools that serve 90% of Utah's children and prioritize equitable, inclusive opportunities for every student to succeed. Now, the association argued that the Utah legislature had overstepped its authority. Governor Cox, however, said he was disappointed in the court's decision. Well, a Heber City man arrested over the weekend in connection with a road rage incident that left a cyclist with a broken leg after being struck by a truck, which then fled the scene. Lauren Russell, a 43-year-old, was booked into the Wasatch County Jail back on Saturday and is now facing multiple charges. Heber City police say that those charges stem from the April 13th incident that had occurred at around 600 South and 100 East, where officers had responded to a report of a cyclist being hit by a vehicle. Now, when officers arrived, the victim was complaining of ankle pain and was later learned that they had suffered a broken leg. Now, surveillance footage from a nearby UPS store showed a gray Chevy truck failing to stop before a sidewalk as a cyclist was crossing. Now, the cyclist appeared to have slapped the hood of the truck as he rode by. Now, moments later, that truck allegedly turned and accelerated toward the cyclist, striking him before fleeing the scene. Police said a witness later identified the suspect vehicle that was parked nearby. Officers spoke with the property owner, who confirmed the vehicle belonged to Russell. They responded and took him into custody. And a man is facing more than 40 felony charges after allegedly sexually abusing boys for 2 decades. Charles Sheldon Bates was arrested on suspicion of sexual exploitation of a minor, aggravated sexual abuse of a child, and forcible sodomy. Now, according to court documents, officers with the Unified Police Department discovered over 134 images of child sexual abuse material. Investigators said that the abuse happened at Bates's home and the Kearns Community Swimming Pool. Now, the investigation began after at least 4 victims came forward to report abuse. Police believe there may be additional victims and are urging anyone with information to contact law enforcement. They say that Bates was participating in the Boy Scouts of America when some of the crimes allegedly occurred. Well, it's been a nice afternoon as we've been in the high 50s today, and tomorrow's going to be even warmer as overnight tonight we'll see temperatures drop into the mid-30s. Then tomorrow, mid-60s expected for Tuesday with sunny skies. It's on Thursday or Wednesday and into Thursday when we'll start to see increasing clouds, possibility of showers and thunderstorms showing up. And that's going to continue through the rest of the week as temperatures continually gradually warm up. By Friday, we'll be close to 70 degrees. And it's the Lawn Doctor that brings you news and weather. If weeds are starting to take over your yard, call the Lawn Doctor with their weed and pre-emergent spray. They can take care of that weed battle for you. 753-LAWN is their phone number. It's the Lawn Doctor. And I'm Will Feelwright with your KVNU News headlines.
The bugs love the good weather. I'm guessing you have a bunch of those creepy crawlers waiting patiently to come into your cozy home. Let Logan Extermination take care of those unwanted pests with a monthly exterior spray. Now, for a limited time, they'll spray your home's exterior monthly from April to October for only $65 per month for a 2,000 square foot or less home. Call Logan Extermination before your home becomes enemy territory. Logan Extermination, 752-8450.
This is Cheryl, bringing you the daily financial market report on behalf of financial advisor Jeff Olson and Edward Jones. Equity markets fell on Monday as President Trump continued his criticism of Federal Reserve Chair Jay Powell and called for interest rates to be cut. Powell, whose term is scheduled to end in March 2026, does not directly control interest rates, but does have influence as the chair and is one of 12 voting members of the Federal Open Market Committee, which is responsible for setting the Fed fund rates. Any more to remove Chair Powell would likely drive investor confidence lower. In our view, as it has been brought into question the Fed's long-standing independence from political influence. Markets are also awaiting any updates on U.S. trade negotiations that are reportedly in progress. In international markets, Asia was mostly higher as China's central bank held interest rates steady as expected. Most markets in Europe were closed in observance of the Easter Monday holiday. The U.S. dollar extended its decline against major international currencies. In commodity markets, WTI oil is trading lower at U.S.-Iran talks continue, which could boost supply if sanctions are loosened, while slowing economic growth could reduce demand. This has been today's financial market report, brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and financial advisor Jeff Olson, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice at 580 North Main in Logan. If you would like additional information, please contact our branch office at 435-787-8170. Daily commentary is also located on our website at edwardjones.com.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance, reminding you that when you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. We're behind schedule, so we're going to jump right back in with a very special guest joining us. A few weeks ago, we spent some time here in the studio with interim director of the Cash, Refugee, and Immigrant Connection, former state representative Dan Johnson. He talked to us a lot about who it is that comprises both the work of nonprofits throughout the state, helping those who have come to Utah through refugee and immigrant programs, but also who it is in the programs, families, young children, people who have been exiled from their country for political or religious reasons, people who have left war-torn countries, and they find themselves in places like Cache Valley trying to learn how to rebuild their lives. And that involves oftentimes learning new languages, learning how to get a driver's license, how to find work, how to find a place to live, and a lot of nonprofit help here in Utah to make that happen. After that interview, several listeners reached out to us and said, what more can we do? Many listeners from outside of Cache Valley said, how can we help in our own communities? And so, of course, the Cache, Refugee, and Immigrant Connection is there for you to help here in Cache Valley and throughout northern Utah. But what about other parts of the state? What about statewide efforts? So we reached out, and our good friend, a longtime guest wearing many different hats over the years, Danny Bues, is joining us to answer those questions specifically. And Danny, thank you for making some time for us. It's fair to say it's complicated, right? Oh, no, we've lost Danny. Danny, are you there? Unfortunately, it looks like we have lost Danny. I don't know why. Well, we will try this again. Caller on the line, and he can't hear us for some reason. We're working on it. Again, Danny, are you there? All right. Well, we're working this out technically. I'll tell you a little bit about the organization Danny works with. It's called the IRC. This is thank you. Sorry about that, Danny. A lot of weird technical stuff going on here. It was
totally
number
fine.
2. Okay. Thank you, Will. It was my fault. I had the wrong phone channel on. Danny, it has been one of those days. So for listeners, you may not have heard any of this, but listeners hopefully did. But You represent an organization as executive director called the International Rescue Committee. This is a long-running nonprofit that does work similar to what the Cash Refugee and Immigrant Connection does, and you've also worked with them before, but on a larger scale, right?
Yeah. We do very similar work, kind of more focused across the state. And yeah, you mentioned we've been around for a long time. We were actually founded by, Albert Einstein helped found our organization to help Jewish refugees fleeing Germany. And so we've been around for a long time in the humanitarian sector and have been doing this work for a long time.
And that's actually a great way to kind of introduce people to this type of work, because when we were talking about political or political refugees, cultural refugees, there are people who have had to leave their countries because a faction comes into power, and now they want to begin a process of ethnically cleansing the undesirable religions and castes, right? There are so many reasons a person can end up in this refugee program, and it's years in the program before they end up here in Utah, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of people get a little confused with the refugee resettlement program and the process for that. And so an economic reason is not reason enough to be considered a refugee. And so you literally have to prove that your life was in danger. And that could be because of your social class. It could be because of your political affiliations. It could be based on religion. And you have to prove those things in order to receive official refugee designation. And that is a process that involves U.S. immigration and customs policy, but also a policy set by Congress. And as we're seeing in the headlines today, there are things even a president can do through executive order that change this program. And so for nonprofit organizations like here in Cache Valley, CRIC, but also the organization working on a larger scale like yours, trying to do this statewide, you have the way it seems to me sometimes, Danny, is nonprofits like the International Rescue Committee are caught between the state telling them, we accept refugees, so do this work, and then sometimes the federal government saying, well, we're going to make it very hard for you to do your work. Is that, does that kind of capture it?
Yeah, that's fair. And I think, as many people know, there's been a 90-day pause on the work we do bringing refugees to the United States, and that has impacted both the IRC in Utah, but also CRIC, which is the organization that I used to work for before working at the IRC. And so, we're kind of in this limbo, trying to figure out, what are the next steps? Sure. What if refugee resettlement doesn't happen anymore, then what can we do to shift our focus on the people who are already here? How can we help refugees become more self-sufficient? How can we help them be successful and integrate into our communities?
Sure. And that, we had this conversation with former State Representative Dan Johnson, again, serving as interim director right now of CRIC, Cash Refugee and Immigrant Connection. And he explained to us, he brought a lot of data with him, but he told us some personal stories of some of these families too. And I walked away from that realizing that honestly, I can't imagine what this experience would be like to go. Imagine growing up here in Cache Valley and suddenly you, for sometimes, survival reasons, have to go into a refugee program. You stay at a refugee camp for 4 or 5 years, and then you find yourself in a nice place, but a place where they don't speak the language you're familiar with. The rules are different. You don't know how to get a job, a driver's license, rent an apartment, or buy a home, all of that stuff. I can't imagine. But that's exactly what you're in the business of doing, right? Helping with that.
Yes. Yeah. And, the federal refugee resettlement program is a 90-day program.
Okay.
So that's what we are tasked to do in 90 days.
Wow.
Which is absolutely impossible.
You have 90 days. So they tell you someone's coming and you have 90 days to basically have a life set up for them. Is that?
Yeah.
That is wild.
In many states. But that is why Utah does it better than anywhere else in the nation. And it's because Utah actually leverages federal funding to help support refugees longer. And so this doesn't cost like Utah taxpayer dollars. The state is able to use federal funding, and we can serve refugees for up to 18 months after arrival. So 90 days is just not enough. If you were to pluck me out of Cache Valley and put me into almost anywhere in the world and say, hey, in 90 days, you're going to get some support from a case manager, but then you're on your own, I would not be successful.
Sure.
And so the state of Utah, we're lucky enough to be able to serve people for longer to ensure that the possibilities of self-sufficiency go way up.
Sure. That is. And then, of course, this is impacted by world events that no one in the state of Utah controlled. Danny, right now, is the work of IRC or even your experience here in Cache Valley with CRIC, is that further complicated by what we're seeing going on in Gaza, Sudan, Ukraine? Does that further complicate things?
Yeah, and I think those are things that as an organization, it's really hard to plan for. For example, at CRIC, we were a tiny nonprofit.
Sure.
And we were just serving refugees and immigrants who had lived here in Cache Valley or had come from other places to Cache Valley for economic reasons, for work, because our economy here is fantastic. And so, but then Afghanistan happened.
Sure.
And there were too many people, too many of our allies. I mean, these are people who fought shoulder to shoulder with American troops. These are people who interpreted and helped and saved our troops in Afghanistan.
Sure.
And so with the fall of Kabul,
their lives,
they had a target.
Their lives are now at risk, right? Because they helped us.
Yeah. And so it was an emergency. Like, we have to evacuate all these Afghan allies and bring them to the United States. Like that was something we had a moral obligation to do.
Sure.
And at CRIC, maybe we weren't the most prepared to handle this, but we felt also that as an organization, we had a moral obligation to help these people that helped our troops. And so we said, yes, we'll step up and we'll help resettle Afghan refugees here. And it's been incredible to see the Cache Valley community respond to that emergency, to that crisis.
Sure.
And then Ukraine happened. And it was the same thing, except there were actually families in Cache Valley and in Franklin County and all over the state of Utah that were saying, hey, I'm going to sponsor a Ukrainian family who is fleeing the war in Ukraine, and they can come live in my house. Wow. And I will sponsor them. And I will work with CRIC, or I will work with the IRC, or I will work with the CCS in Utah, and we will do the case management together.
Wow.
And it's been incredible to see community members open up their homes to people they have no idea who they are.
That's amazing.
And help them start a new life here, Jason, in Cache Valley and other parts of Utah.
That is so this to me is interesting as well, Danny, for those out there interested in helping. As we discussed with former State Representative Dan Johnson here in the studio, you can give directly to local organizations like CRIC, the Cache Refugee and Immigrant Connection. You can volunteer your time. They're always looking for that as well. But you can also do more even in the countries that we know have been impacted, where we know there are going to be refugees seeking asylum for many different reasons. And the International Rescue Committee has some of that work going on as well, right? Even distributing water and basic supplies in some areas?
Yes, yeah, and that's something that makes the IRC so unique, is that international portion of the work. And so the IRC helps with education funding across the world, or medical clinics to vaccinate people against measles and other diseases. And so we have a large component of our work that happens overseas.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a big Utah aspect to it, but also the International Rescue Committee does so much work all over the world.
Danny Bues, Executive Director of the Utah International Rescue Committee, our guest here again. And Danny, just a minute and a half left here in our time before the hour ends, but how can people help? I know for listeners out there, rescue.org is the website for the International Rescue Committee, and there are donate buttons and more there, but is there more someone can do?
Yeah, I think, giving their time, I think is a really important aspect of the work right now.
Sure.
Where there's uncertainty in what we do. And so volunteers connecting with refugees, helping them where maybe we can't help anymore is a really helpful part of things right now. And then also, the refugee resettlement and refugee services is actually something that contributes tremendously to our community.
Sure.
And our economy. And so these refugees add value. And so if you feel like you want to contact your representatives and let them know that refugee resettlement is a program that we accept here, that's a good way to get back right now as well.
Great advice. Danny Bues, again, thank you for your time. Always a pleasure to have you join us. And you can learn more. He's an executive director of the Utah International Rescue Committee. You can learn more about the community